Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 5th Fly AI webinars. Today, we will highlight how data sharing is enabling the development of new data analytics and AI capabilities for aviation. We will discuss some of the challenges linked to data collection, data governance, data security, data regulation, and share some insight about how we are managing to build trust between competitive actors. I am Romaric Redon. I am the head advisor on artificial intelligence technologies in Airbus and will act as the moderator as well as being one of the panelists today. It's my pleasure to introduce you to the wonderful panel we have with Leopold Viroles, data for safety lead analyst at IATA, Federico Milani, Deputy Head of the Data Policy and Innovation Unit in the EU Commission, Jean Rose Carpio, Head Business Intelligence Industry Data Management in IATA, and David Marsh, Head of Business Intelligence and Statistics at Eurocontrol. So we will go through the 5 presentations and have a question and answer session at the end of the meeting. And if you are experiencing any technical issue, please use the chat. And for the question and answer, use the question and answer channel to raise the question, and we will manage them at the end of the presentation. So we'll start. So let us move to the first presentation, which is about our Airbus data sharing for a artificial intelligence journey inside Airbus. So I will walk through 3 different epochs which we had in Airbus. So the first epoch was somehow 12 years ago and was about data sharing and using artificial intelligence to improve A380 operations. The second epoch is linked to the launch of the Airbus Skywise platform in 2017, aiming at sharing data and using artificial intelligence to improve aviation's operation. The third epoch is just starting. It is about sharing data and using AI to provide assistance to the pilot. So starting with epoch 1, linked to A380, the A380 was the first Airbus aircraft equipped with a new generation of flight data recording capacity, enabling to collect a lot of sensor data and also enabling accessing some of the sensor data while the aircraft was flying. And thanks to data sharing with major airlines operating the A380, Airbus developed the Airbus real-time health monitoring service.
Marik, we are not seeing your presentation.
Ah, good. It should be better like this.
Now we can, thank you.
Yes, sorry for that. So first epoch. So yeah, it was about, as I was saying, sharing data linked to A380 operations. So We had an approach to share the data with major airlines operating the A380, and we developed the real-time health monitoring services. And the approach was to follow the health of aircraft systems and to identify any anomaly or degradations that may affect the airline's operation, and to perform preventive maintenance actions or mitigation actions to optimize the operation. And at that time, machine learning was already used together with system expertise to build the right health indicator and do prognosis and health management. Moving to Epoch 2, this is in 2017, Airbus launched the Skywise platform, scaling the previous approach to all types of Airbus aircraft. And today, Skywise collects data from a fleet of 9,000 aircraft operated by more than 130 airlines. And Skywise collects sensors from aircraft, but not only. Skywise enabled to collect data from the whole aviation ecosystem, including semi-structured information, such as, for example, maintenance report that are coming from airlines. More generally, Skywise support data sharing between different actors, such as Airbus, the airlines, the airport, or airworthiness authorities, as you will see later with IATA and the Eurocontrol presentation. One of the fundamental elements to establish the trust between the actors is to put in place an efficient data governance, and this was key for Skywise. Also, in order to enable the scaling, Skywise is based on state-of-the-art big data and cloud technology. And also, we had to build an ontology which really enabled to facilitate the sharing of information beyond the raw data. And all this data is a gold mine to develop analytics on artificial intelligence to improve aviation operation, and I will provide some example. So first example, similar than what we did for the A380. I mean, we have a service which is called Skywise Predictive Maintenance, which is enabling to provide anomaly detection capacity and doing preventive maintenance actions. We also have different digital services. I'm highlighting two of them here. One is about improving the fuel efficiency, so optimizing the amount of fuel that should be on board, and also doing a reliability analysis, so better identify components that are not reliable enough. And this is using both sensor data, but also natural language processing to make sense out of maintenance reports. Moving to the third epoch. The third epoch is about using artificial intelligence to provide assistance to the pilot. It starts with collecting new type of data to develop new artificial intelligence capabilities. And here you have two examples. There are more, but let's focus on these two examples. So one is linked to the aspect of collecting voice data, the exchange between the air traffic controller and the pilot. And this is something that we will process through natural language processing. So to find this kind of messages, which we have depicted here. And another example is to collect image data corresponding to the landing to provide assistance for the landing. So I will go through these two examples. So first aspect, assistance to the pilot for the communication with the controller. So this is something which is actually quite challenging because these are voice messages, but which are delivered at high speech rate with a lot of accent, with a lot of noise in the cockpit, and also using a specific phraseology. So in order to make sense out of this message, you need to develop a specific AI algorithm which will do custom speech to text. To explain you that, I will first let you hear what it looks like, the sound of a message. Could you confirm you're hearing this message? No. Okay, so this is something. Okay, so nevertheless, this is the message. I mean, with the custom speech to text, you can see what is the content of the message. Easy Victor Bravo, contact 121 decimal 9 bye bye. But this, if you hear the real sample, you will see it's going much faster than this. And if you provide this content through, I would say, an off-the-shelf speech-to-text engine, such as the one that could be provided by Google, and if you don't retrain the algorithm, this is the kind of result that you will get. The robot contact with someone this morning, bye-bye. So something which is a nonsense. So Airbus is really actually investing on technology to provide assistance to the pilot. Airbus organized a challenge where different academics, tech companies, labs took part in 2018. And we are still improving the system at the moment to deal with the different challenges. And what we need is more data. Not only more data, but more annotations on this data. And this is something on which we plan to release really a standard to help gathering more data and sharing more data. Also, I mean, just to give you the example, but about what I mean by an annotation, here you have some text where I have highlighted two items, which are the runway and the runway identification. These are the kind of stuff that we want to annotate, but there are more inside the transcript. Moving to another example, which is my second example about vision-based landing. So in last year, in fact, Airbus demonstrated vision-based autonomous taxiing, takeoff and landing of an A350. And this was a great achievement, which was even noticed. You have a tweet from Yann Lequin, who retweeted a tweet from our CTO, Grazia Vitadini. And yeah, it was the first time ever that AI, in occurrence deep learning, was used to identify the runway. And then we had autonomous guidance to really land the aircraft. Also, we did the same for the taxiing phase and for the takeoff phase. So you can go on YouTube and you will see the videos, from example, from the takeoff. So these are very promising results, and we also are improving this result through collecting more data to improve the robustness. So in that case, it means more image, more video of different approach on different airport, but also synthetic data will be used in this specific case, in the same way that for autonomous driving, we use a lot of mix of real data and synthetic data. And we will have to work on an automated annotation process. So I think, okay, my presentation is not okay. So just to give the takeaway from this first presentation. So the first aspect is to say that access to data is key to unleash AI full potential for aviation. And the second aspect is that AI is already providing value for aviation, and I have provided you with some examples in terms of predictive maintenance, also some of the new stuff we will do on speech to text in the cockpit, and enabling vision-based landing to assist the pilot while doing the landing of the aircraft. And this being said, I thank you for your attention, and I will be happy to take any questions later on in the question and answer session. And I will leave the floor to our next great panelist. So you can share your slides.
Good afternoon, Romaric. Good afternoon, everybody. I believe you can hear me now. You can see my slides. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for the introduction and for your first presentation, Romaric. Now I would like to propose to focus on aviation safety. And in particular, I would like to focus on the Data for Safety program and explain how with this program we enable data sharing to provide some analytical capacities, and in particular in the field of artificial intelligence. Just to make sure we are on the same page, I would like to touch a few words about the Data for Safety program. This is a major initiative in Europe, sponsored by the European Commission, impulsed by the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, but this is the program of the European aviation stakeholders for aviation safety, by extension, sustainable aviation. And as explained, as shown on this slide, we started the journey for a first phase, a demonstrator for concept phase, with some key players of our European aviation ecosystem. We have with us since 2017 and supporting us, engaging with us to deliver by the end of this year this POC. 7 airlines, you have them on this slide: British Airways, EasyJet, Iberia, KLM, Lufthansa, Ryanair, Vueling. We have as well 3 national aviation authorities: the Irish one, IATA, the French one, the GAC, and the Spanish one, AESA. We have 2 aircraft manufacturers, not the smallest ones, Airbus and Boeing, and very important in this context, and we talk about data sharing and analysis, collaborative one, the European Cockpit Association, representing the pilot unions. Now I would like to explain, when we focus on aviation safety, how this Data for Safety program is enabling the development of new analytics capabilities for aviation safety and sustainable aviation. As you can see on the right side, there are 3 main ingredients. We are securing and organizing with Data for Safety. The first one, and I will start with this one, the data. We have in our ecosystem some very interesting silos of aviation data produced around the operations. And with D4S, we started with these 4 main data sources. So the flight data is provided by the airlines. This is their sensor data acquired during the in-service operations on a daily basis for each flight, recording the evolution of the systems, what's going on in the cockpit. With the traffic information, so far we collected traffic information from the ADSB data. We collected since 2018 with global coverage. Very important sources of information when it comes to safety are the safety reports. So that this is the traditional main material for the national aviation authorities, for IATA, to monitor and manage safety. And we collect these safety reports and share them with the program. And the last component is more contextual information, but very important when it comes to safety, weather information. And for this, we collect all the main components being ground or satellite-based on our program. So how do we do this? How do we do this technically? It will not be possible without complementing with the big data technologies. So with the program, and as you can see in the center of the slide, we are setting up a big data platform, securing the most advanced big data technologies for the program in terms of processing power, but as well in terms of methodologies, data science possibilities we can apply to this data. The last ingredient, as important as the data and the technology, is the expert knowledge. So there it's really about people, and it's not only now aviation expertise, it's as well data science. And we augment the big data platform with a collaborative analysis platform, organizing the analytical capacity, the work of the experts, being subject matter experts of the aviation field, or data scientists, data analysts with a special skill set, know-how, to operate the big data technologies and infer information out of this data I mentioned. Alors, inferring information data in our data for safety context, it means mainly to infer safety intelligence. And the objective is to more and more have a proactive, preventive approach of safety, know where to look thanks to the analysis of the data, anticipate on the risks, the development of the new threats, and take actions before we have any serious occurrence or events in service. So this safety intelligence take several forms. On this visual, I tried to summarize the main categories, main families of outputs, and I will try to explain how they relate to artificial intelligence. So I will start with metrics. These are safety performance indicators, very traditional way of analyzing data, but already thanks to the sharing of data across organizations, we can build a systemic picture, have an understanding of the level of performance in terms of safety at a systemic level in Europe. Thanks to the data shared by different organizations, if I take the example of the airlines, we can offer blind benchmarking possibilities to our members, the members of the program. And so an airline can compare its level of performance with peer operators in a very secure manner, but re-inject this into its safety management processes. Direct studies are deep dive analysis, and this is where we leverage on the big data technologies and the most advanced data science techniques. And this is where already at this stage, during the demonstrator, that we started to operate some artificial intelligence capabilities. We focused at this stage of the program pretty much on the analysis of text. You mentioned it, Romaric. Now that we collect and analyze at European level, we have more than 2 million safety reports being shared and analyzed, and it raises a lot of technical challenges to make sense and infer actionable safety intelligence out of these safety reports. Vulnerability discovery is the last step on which we are working, and the idea is to more and more rely on the technology to support us identify the emerging threats in the system. This being said, what I would like to emphasize are two main challenges. The first one is pretty much focused on enabling data sharing. And to achieve this, share this data across organizations of this nature at this scale, we had to create a trustworthy environment. It's all about trust. And on this slide, the main message I would like to convey today is that there is no one magic solution. This trustworthy environment is built based on a set of different instruments. The first one is the governance, the program governance. It's a collaborative voluntary program of the European aviation stakeholders, and this is translated at the level of the governance of the program. Without entering into too much details, we have two boards, steering board, technical board, but what is important is to understand is that they are collaboratively co-chaired by authorities and industries and the data owners. Below this steering board and technical board, they are to take decisions, commit on resources, and orient technical work. We have a third-party data processing and protecting organizations providing both the big data capacity, organizing the collection of the data, but as well with a very important function to protect the data in the context of the program.
Leopold, you have something which went on your screen.
Thank you very much for my indeed. To provide the required supervision capabilities, the program members specific supervisory panel made of IT experts from the founding members, the data owner organizations, that is there to check from data reception, data analysis, and outputting that the principles agreed and defined by the members via the different set of governance instruments, charter, rules and procedures, data governance are properly implemented. So as a summary, you can see that creating a trustworthy environment in the data for safety context consists in a set of governance, data protection, IT info security, procurement, legal instruments. The second challenge I would like to highlight today is very focused on the application of AI to aviation data in the context of data for safety and in support of aviation safety. There, I would like to make a quick reference to the first usable guidance for level 1 that was published by IATA and the IATA Artificial Intelligence Roadmap. It's a new type of data science methodologies that we are applying to the data. And if you remember, the objective of the Data for Safety program is to produce actionable safety intelligence, which means to support decision-making, data-driven decision-making. And to be efficient in this process, we need as well to have sufficient confidence in the artificial intelligence solutions that we operate to infer knowledge out of the data. And in this context, there are still numerous challenges, and perhaps the two main ones that I would like to share today and mention are the learning insurance and explainability. A lot of solutions are based on a process of learning of the artificial intelligence solutions, and we are deploying specific methodologies to ensure that this process, this learning process, can be properly developed, mainly via data management solutions. When it comes to explainability, this is perhaps where we have most of the work still to be performed. This is about our capacity to then report and explain the behavior and the level of performance of the artificial intelligence that we implement and use to infer safety intelligence. On this, I will hand over back to you, Romaric, to continue with the next presentation.
Thank you, Leopold, and Federico. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me start my presentation. I hope you can see my presentation.
Yes, we can.
So I'm Federico Milani. I'm working at the Commission in DG Connect, and I'm the Deputy of the Unit of Data Policy and Innovation. I would like now to take a bit a broader view on what is the Commission doing in order to promote the use of data and access to data. If you remember, in February 2020, relatively soon after that, the new commission took in place, and thanks also to the engagement of our Commissioner Breton, we have published a European strategy for data, where the major objective is to create a common European data space and a single market for data, where data can flow within the EU and across sector, where there will be availability of high quality data to create and innovate, where there will be, however, all the European rules and values are fully respected. And for example, GDPR, so privacy, confidentiality of data should be fully respected, but also where rules for accessing use of the data are fair, practical, clear, and also clear governance mechanisms are put in place. And we've already heard the importance of having governance, data governance in place and mechanism in place, so that it will be possible to create an environment of trust between the data providers and the data users. So the strategy is deployed through 4 pillars. There is a governance framework for data, which includes a number of legislative instruments for the governance of European data spaces and for other cross-sectoral measures for data access and use. We've got also investments on a high-impact project on European data spaces and federated cloud infrastructure, which will build the basis where data spaces can be built up and created. So we are working with cloud and edge service provider, so that they will be able to offer basic services for the creation of these data spaces. We are also trying to set up a number of investment courses, masters, to try to again fulfill and to fill the gap that there is on lack of data analysts, AI experts that will be able to use and exploit this data. And we also plan to roll out common European data spaces in crucial economy sectors and domain of public interest, and to look also at the governance and practical arrangements in order to set them up. So let's move now a bit briefly on the aspects of the legislative process that and the legislative instruments that we are planning and that has been announced in the European Strategy for Data. The first one is, of course, the Data Governance Act, where we talk briefly later on. Because there, what we want to create is a trust environment in data transaction where public sector data, private sector data, and personal data can be made voluntarily available by the various data holders. We've also adopted a Digital Market Act, which has got more the aspects of looking at and regulating the market power based on data. So look at how there are in certain sectors, there is the dominance of a number of organizations, which we call them gatekeepers, and we want to see how we can regulate them so to promote better innovations and facilitate new entrants in that specific sectors. We've got also an implementing act on high value data sets that again might be of interest, especially in the aviation sectors, where we want to where we are requiring to the public administration to make accessible high value data sets for in a machine readable format through API. And in the sectors that we are focusing, there are data sets like meteorological and weather forecast data, or geospatial information that again could be of interest. Again, there the objective is to make these data sets freely available and in an easy way to reuse, so that SMEs will have a lower barrier to be able to use those data. We are also working on a data act that will probably be adopted by the end of the year, where we are also looking at another aspect, which is ensuring fairness in the allocation of the data value among the various actors of the data economy. When we are talking about data sharing, of course, we are not talking about only sharing for free, but also trading data or monetization of data. And again, there in the Data Act, we are also looking at a particular aspects of data. So the data that is co-generated, so the IoT data, where an organization or a company is buying a devices that is producing data, and that data usually is collected by the producer of the device. So how can we make sure that the data can be shared and that the value generated by the device can be shared between the producer of the device and also the user of the device? And last but not least, we have to remember that really recently, the end of April, we have also proposed adopted a proposal for an Artificial Intelligence Act, which is looking again at creating an environment where the safety and the fundamental rights of people and businesses should be taken into account when developing AI. And although for environment and for like the aviation environment where there is already safety regulation in place, it will not apply. I think it's worth looking at it and considering it, because further development or further changes in the safety regulations will have to take into account on the regulation of artificial intelligence. Talking about the Data Governance Act, I will not go through in detail on what it's talking about, but there is one aspect that I would like here to mention briefly, because what we would like to support is the creation of new neutral data intermediaries for the single market of data. This one is an important aspect because we believe that the creation of data spaces where data can be shared between providers and users can happen only if we are going to have data intermediaries that could assure that the data is going to be used only for specific purposes that have been set up by the data providers. This one will not only assure that the data providers will have the possibility of controlling how the data is used, but also will assure the data users that by using that data, they will not have legal issues or problem after that they develop their products. We are also touching upon other aspects like, for example, standards and interoperability by creating European Data Innovation Board. We are looking at data altruism, so try to see how corporate and individual can provide their data for purposes of general interest. And we are also looking at the use of sensitive data held by the sector, public sector bodies. As mentioned before, we are also investing on supporting the creation of common European data spaces. And we've mentioned 9 data spaces in the data strategy. There, what we want to do is, first of all, support the creation of a technical infrastructure where services like edge infrastructure, cloud infrastructure, but also high performance computing, and then processing of data, so AI testing experimentation will be in place so that companies will be able to use this infrastructure to use the data. But also we are looking at the higher level where we want to support the creation of these data spaces, so to get the major stakeholders get together, establish a governance mechanism in order to share the data, and also develop technical tools for data pooling and sharings. And this all, we are going to do it through initiatives, but also through the support of the Digital Europe program. It's worth noting that within the mobility data spaces, our colleague of DG Move are also looking at the aspects of an aviation subspace for data sharing. And within that activities that they are looking now closely, there is what they've already announced on they announced a proposal for the reform of a single European sky, the SES2 Plus, which includes a proposal to enable the development of a market for air traffic management and data services, where it will be possible to make operational data available to other service providers, so that we are going to open up again the market of this type of specific data, of course, respecting all the safety and the safety issues that could involve in sharing this type of data. So what we are going to do basically, and here I've summarized, is try to create a new European way of sharing data. So create the right condition for people, companies, and authorities to share the data in a secure and trust-creating manner. We want to build trust in data sharing. We are looking at personal and non-personal data. We want to promote the use of public sector information also through novel mechanisms that protect the information and the privacy, so personal data and confidential business data. And we want to create the sectoral common European data spaces in several sectors. Those 9 are just the first one, but there are many others that are coming on. And we want to ensure fairness in the allocation of data value among the various sectors. These are the main objectives and the main activities of the Commission towards the creation of a common European data space not a sectoral one, where data can be shared and used in a trusted manner by all the major stakeholders. And with this, I finish. I'll give back the word to you, Romari.
Thank you, Federico. Now we will move on to Jean for the presentation from IATA.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
And I hope now you can see my slides.
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Thank you, Romari. So good afternoon. My name is Jean Ruiz Carpio. I work on aviation analytics at IATA, mostly involved in the rollout of global data exchange programs based here in Switzerland. So it's a pleasure to join this panel today. In the next few slides, I want to walk you through how airlines need data to achieve safe and efficient operations, the role of IATA in developing data exchange programs to support our members, and we can review a few user cases on artificial intelligence. So allow me a quick word on IATA. We are a global trade association with 290 member airlines in 120 countries, representing 82% of global air traffic. If we go into the topic, airlines are no different than airports and aviation services and other stakeholders in the aviation area. They operate in a complex environment and rely on multidimensional data. In front of you, there is a typical boarding card passengers receive when you fly from place A to point B. And it shows you at high level the various data points that airlines require to conduct their business. So from right to left, you see data is powering activities on network and fleet planning, on optimization of schedules, on ground operations, on decisions on revenue management, on decisions on service for frequent flyers, and all the way through to setting marketing and alliance strategies, creating user interfaces for passenger facilitation, the choice of distribution channels in which airlines decide to sell their tickets, flight, baggage operations, and so on. I wanted to put this picture to make the point that airlines are in constant use of airline data and analytics to coordinate operations and for decision-making. Today, airlines are investing on big data capabilities and artificial intelligence technology to increase their efficiency, and the pandemic has only accelerated this trend. If I go back 10 years, airlines had already well understood the value of data beyond their own. Together with IATA, they initiated the setup of data exchange programs that could deliver the much needed global insights. An early program on business intelligence was Direct Data Solutions, DDS, which captures 100% of airline tickets across all sales distribution channels, allowing the industry to have a complete view of passenger demand. We also have IOSA, the IATA Operational Safety Audit Program, which is set to improve global safety levels. I think my colleagues have speak in a great level on it. Safety standards were developed by IOSA and had enabled a centralized data repository of audit reports that the industry uses to identify best practices. Another example in this chart is Global Aviation Data Management, GADM, which has components on safety for accident, incident, and flight data exchanges, ADX, IDX, FDX, and there is a lot of interest in standardizing taxonomies in order to be compatible with other programs across the world. Moving on, I want to share with you what we believe has been the recipe of success in all these collaborations. In my view, the fact that our programs are built on trust and transparency has really been the key. We have developed best practices along the way, and these can be grouped in the three areas that you see: data governance, data management, and applying a collaborative approach. Let's look briefly into each of them. On data governance, airlines crafted the concept of give to get. An airline can access the pool of available data, provided it also shares its own company information. Data formats, taxonomies also follow accepted standards, and each participant must provide the mandatory data requirements. Without a significant sample, there is no real value in a data exchange, and therefore we take the lead in achieving critical mass. And this means that the pool of data must be representative enough to draw averages and aggregations. Our programs are open. Any interested airline can take part in the exchange. And in addition, there are different data access levels to share information with the stakeholders. On the data management side, all listed elements, data compliance, security, engineer, are important, but I would highlight data quality as a key aspect of the exchange in my experience. Quality KPIs have been established to monitor data accuracy, completeness, latency levels, which is what creates or improves the value of a data set. Last but not least, a collaborative approach. Programs are equipped with industry sounding boards. These are airline groups that discuss the strategic aspects of the exchange and drive enhancements as the needs for data are constantly evolving. Industry stakeholders, system providers are also integrated in the programs. So overall, these practices resonate with airlines, and we have hundreds of airlines that are part of the programs. IATA holds a neutral position. Our role is to ensure transparency. The programs are built for no free riders, and the IATA legal team is involved in regulatory compliance of all of our activities. I would say in result, we aim to provide the industry with harmonized industry data. This is where the real value is, in normalizing, standardizing, and making sure that it arrives at the right time. Our data is meant to follow IATA standards, government requirements, and airline best practices. So on the topic of AI, we have discussed how global exchanges do enable airlines insights and analytics. And our role in IATA continues in the AI space, working with airlines to identify and get access to new data sets that can power advanced analytics and machine learning tools. The chart shows a few examples of how airlines are using data science today to identify demand signals for customer digital experience, for network planning, for predictive maintenance, and for people services and learnings, I would say are the most obvious examples. Let me talk about demand signals, which refers to identifying new triggers for passenger demand. We know the pandemic has disrupted historical demand trends. So to the traditional use of ticketing data, airlines are now adding search data, sentiment data, COVID rate patterns, vaccine rates, destination data, to try to anticipate trends. AI is the enabler to process and develop meaningful insights, and to do it at a much faster pace in a changing environment as we have now. Another example is network planning. Airline data scientists want to be able to forecast if a flight is going to be profitable within an airline environment. And knowing the answer to these questions weeks in advance can allow the teams to allocate the right equipment or make alternative arrangements. To answer the challenge, airlines are developing predictive analytics for demand according to their own company strategies and their market conditions. Demand predictions also trigger a fine-tuning of resources. On in-flight services, for example, it can allow to plan for the right amount of catering or coordinate the right number of agents for check-in. Airlines have the potential to be more efficient and minimize waste, which is also important for their sustainability goals. Another example is on predictive maintenance, and this is gaining great importance as it has been discussed in a previous presentation today. Using digital sensors, airlines can capture data on their aircraft frames, engines, other parts. And with this intelligence, airlines can anticipate and better organize maintenance to their equipment, achieving improved safety and increase on their on-time performance. So all in all, you can see the adoption of AI in the airline business is only expected to grow. We observe at IATA how airlines start to incorporate data science teams in their businesses, and in some cases, set company goals to achieve digital maturity and become data-driven organizations. To close, I want to share with you some initiatives that are being driven by the IATA innovation team to support the industry restart. Accelerate at IATA is a program giving airlines access to AI BI startups and fast-track the use of new technology. Data think tanks are set to identify new data needs and analytical priorities. Data science labs and a developer community is being assembled to support airlines on their journey, as they are at different stages, depending on the size of the airline, and develop an open data ecosystem for the industry. You can find more information on our website. And with that, I'll finish. Thanks for your attention, and back to you, Romaric.
Thank you, Jean. And yeah, we are perfectly on time, so we move to the last presentation from David, and we will be able to take questions. Please note that you can potentially vote for the questions you want to be raised to the speaker. So David, the floor is yours. You're still muted.
Trying to share my right.
Yes, we hear you, and we see the
my
slides.
presentation now, I hope.
But we see the presenter mode at the moment.
Oh, okay. I'll try a different one.
Maybe the other screen.
Desktop 2.
Yes, perfect.
You see it? Okay, thank you. So thank you. After that false start, I'm going to round off this collection of very interesting presentations with a view on what Eurocontrol is doing with aviation data and AI, and how it's providing data so that others can also do AI. But I think best maybe to start with to understand our data. I think it helps to understand what Eurocontrol is. So in brief, we're an international organization owned by our member states. And we support European aviation. That's our role. In more detail, we have a range of different activities at our center. So we do training in Luxembourg, as you can see. In France, we have our main research center, and that's also the hub for our growing network of innovation labs. In the Netherlands, we control the upper airspace of the Benelux countries and also Northwest Germany. And then our headquarters is in Belgium, in Brussels, where we do a range of activities, including we are the network manager for Europe. So we do what's sometimes called flow management across the entire network. We provide a centralized billing service. We do civil military coordination and a host of other activities. And this gives us a particular perspective, a set of data on 11 million flights in a typical year. Okay, we haven't had some typical years for a while, but that was 2019. Let's unpack that 11 million flights and the data that goes along with it. I've split it into columns and rows. On the right-hand side, you see the sort of commercial data sets that we acquire to use in our activities. They're not of particular interest here. On the left-hand column, we have data that are provided to us so that we can deliver those activities. And that's where the interest comes. I think it's useful just to think of it on a timeline before the day of operations. Okay, we're an operationally oriented organization. We receive flight plans. We are in constant discussion with airports about their capacities and plans. We are discussing with their navigation service providers on the route and airspace structure. We have models of aircraft performance, about avionics. We have databases about infrastructure, so communications and navigation and surveillance plans and availability. And we compile and distribute NOTAMs, the notices about the state of the aviation network. On the day, we are constantly receiving updates to all of those, plus, in addition, radar and flight data from across Europe and sometimes further afield. Afterwards, the data set gets even more rich because the billing process gets validated flight and fleet data. We build a set of performance data. We're involved in the emissions trading scheme, so we have fuel consumption data from that. And there's a host of other data sources, data sets that add context to that 11 million flights. It's not just 11 million rows in a spreadsheet somewhere. With that data, of course, we are doing AI ourselves. We're aiming to improve operations of ourselves and to help our stakeholders. So, for example, we've been working on improving the prediction of when aircraft are going to arrive in sector so that we can use the scarce airspace capacity better. The flight planning process involves a lot of exchanging of flight planning and corrected flight plans, changes to flight plans. We're using AI to remove some of the manual interventions that were needed on that. So that's a faster and more efficient planning process. We are helping to anticipate knock-on delay. We are also building tools on cyber. You'll see if you follow the link there, when you get the presentation, you'll see some more examples online. And indeed, the next Fly AI webinar is all about cyber, so there's more of that to come. But today is really about data for AI. And so I think it's useful to pull out two big initiatives with which we're powering both our AI and other people's. The Research and Development Data Archive is currently 14 million flights of data, and it's growing. So in July, it will grow to 15 million flights. And the data are freely available for people working in research and development. There's a link there that you can follow. It includes the filed flight plan, the actual route that was taken, and some of the contextual information about the routes that were available and the airspace structure at the time. If you're more on the operational side, then you need more live data, and that we put out through the Network Manager business-to-business web services. And indeed, we use that for some of the AI activities that are listed there on the left ourselves. So we use it as well as others using it for AI applications. Those two initiatives can't cover all of the ground. So we also participate. Romeric and Leo have talked about the Skywise and Data for Safety initiatives. We collaborate in those. As Jean put it, we give data into them so we can get access to data and do our own safety studies and other things. But we're also enabling others to do work within those controlled, trustworthy environments, as Leo called them. And there's a lot of other statistics on the Eurocontrol website. There's a link there to some which would help with orienting, with understanding traffic trends and patterns, but maybe not the volumes of data that you might hope and would be available from the R&D data archive, for example, and that you might want for AI. So that's really the scope of the data and some of the ways in which that it's accessible. Just wanted to end with a few lessons that I think we've learned in in sharing data over time. We have a preference, I think, for sharing analysis capability rather than bulk data. We've learned the hard way that actually sharing data in volume is more difficult than you might think. Sometimes it's about the terms of use and the limitations and what we're allowed to do with it and not allowed to do with it. Sometimes it's about validity. The data might be fit for our purpose, for the current purpose, but someone comes in expecting to be able to do something else with it and realizes, actually, we need to do quite a lot to get it fit for a new purpose. That can be quite time consuming. Some of the ways that we're approaching that or trying to solve that problem, we're involved in the CESAR research program. CESAR is the large European aviation research program, looking into federated model training. And as I mentioned before, we're also involved in the data for safety and Skywise activities. Second lesson, the UK and the USA were once described, I think, as two countries divided by a common language. And sometimes I think aviation is also is a community divided by a common language. You think everything is regular. The phraseology, the terminology, the coding is all neatly specified in books. But when it comes down to it, there are a lot more differences in the coding of places, in the classification and grouping of aircraft types, then you might think. Everybody has a different way of doing things, and it's never a clean process. But we've been working in system-wide information management now for quite a long time. And I think we would encourage the development of open standards, or the adoption of open standards for that sort of classification, and the ATM information reference model would be one approach to that. And then finally, I think it's great we've got hundreds of people joined in here for an AI aviation webinar. It's a growing community, it's enthusiastic, there's a lot of good ideas, a lot of energy going into it. But there are more of you now than there are of us. So we have to standardize our request and response process. We can't answer each request individually and tailor a data set for each individual's need, unfortunately. Or maybe to go back to what Federico was saying, it's also about fairness. You know, we can't do for one research group, which we wouldn't also be willing to do for another research group. So we're trying to generalize our offer. And one of the ways we've been doing that is establishing the R&D data archive so that everybody has access to a very large data set, which in historic terms, I think is also generous. So do get access to it, and good luck. And we'll see what AI can do for aviation in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So thank you all for the great presentations. We will just sum up some takeaway messages, and then we will go to the questions. Still, you can go and vote for the questions. Okay. Yeah, just trying to summarizing the different aspects we have seen in the presentation. So the first aspect is that AI is not science fiction. And if you have had a look to the other Fly AI seminar, webinar, you had also already the opportunity to see many examples, and you saw also some examples during this webinar. So there are many examples where we are actually using AI. Since this webinar was focusing on data sharing, it's true that we spoke mostly about data-driven AI, but we also encompass symbolic AI on some of our application. Second aspect is, for sure, access to data is key. especially if we want to do data-driven AI. And when this is linked to the revolution in which we are with machine learning, deep learning, and this is the way we are generating a lot of the value for aviation, which you saw in the different example. Then comes the different challenges in terms of quality, security, governance of data, which are a must when sharing data. And there are many questions linked to this aspect. So this is really about building trust among potentially competitive actors. So we will provide maybe more detail in some of the questions, answering some of the questions. So I will maybe start being kind of democratic and looking at the questions which have been the more voted. So there is a first question, which is about the way we build the trust. On the question there is, in aviation world, this challenge becomes a necessity. I mean, I will just read the question entirely. Building trust in data sharing is paramount. Sorry, it just moved on my screen. Each time there is a new question, it's just skipped. So the question, I mean, the question is about the sensibility on the way we are protecting the data. So we need to build the trust for the data sharing, and we need to ensure the aspect linked to safely secure this transaction. So the question is what measure we can take in order to protect the data, especially in ATM and ANS, on what tools the industry has produced towards the safeguarding of this sensitive data. So I will just, before providing the question to IATA or to Eurocontrol, honestly, on this topic, I would just say, yes, there is a next seminar that will focus on the cybersecurity aspect, so really how we protect the infrastructure. But then I'm happy either for IATA or for Eurocontrol to provide elements of answers.
Perhaps on this one, Romaric, as the focus is on ATM&S, I would like perhaps to propose to David to start, and I will complement.
Thanks, Leo. Yes, I mean, I think we certainly agree on the security side of things, and trust. As I think I tried to illustrate, we have a whole data flow. We have data suppliers, and we have to maintain their trust, otherwise our flow gets cut off, and then we can't deliver the applications. So then it's about there's a separation of the data into different levels of security and need, and there's a big difference between the historic data that you find in the R&D data archive and the live data that's available in the B2B feed, for example. And the processes involved in getting access to those are also very different. The level of authentication that is needed to get that access. So I think in a way it's a little like the whole safety in aviation, which is a layered approach, where you have a number of different safety nets. I think also with data security, we have a number of different layers of security to protect the data. But in the end, maybe in the past we've erred on the wrong side. AI is hungry for data, and it's been easier to keep the doors closed than to let some out. And so I think there's this balance to draw between safeguarding and giving access to valuable data sets, as Federico described them. So it's about a layered process.
Thank you, David. I think it also answers the second question, which was how to avoid data misuse while sharing the data across various organizations, misuse in terms of security and safety. Any stuff you want to complement, Leopold, on this topic?
Perhaps the only point, as I explained, we have a set of transversal mechanisms to create this trust, create the data protection. that we apply to any type of data to protect as well any organization and any aviation professional. But I would say if we focus on ATM ANM, like for the other family of organizations, the pillar, the key principle of the data for safety approach, because we are a very centralized program, is to make sure the communities from the ATM ANS are involved at governance level, are involved at technical level, to make sure the purposes with which we use this data, and as well the way we approach analytics, outputting, makes sense from their perspective. And in this process, we do not jeopardize their data or their organizations or their aviation professionals. I think it's the involvement of these communities at governance level in the details of the work that is an enabler for data sharing, at least on the data for safety part, that is a systemic post-processing program. We have to read it differently from the operational daily management that David explained.
Thank you.
If I may complement,
okay.
Although it's not focusing on the aviation sector, but it's one of the major problems with that one that we are discussing on data sharing, and it's similar to various other data spaces, like, for example, the health data spaces. Even if there it's personal, the protection of privacy of the people of the of the people. So the point there would be, in try to answer the questions, is it's not possible as soon as the data is shared to have a full control of the data that is shared. The point would be to make sure, by creating the link between the data users and the data provider, and by assuring the identity of the data user and the data provider, and by establishing a contract between the data user and the data providers, that the data will be used, and the data that is going to be provided will be serve the purpose that the data user is requiring. So it's not making accessible the entire data sets that a company or a data provider has, but only the specific requirements. In specific cases, as I was saying, in the health sector, actually, it's not even the data that is moving, but it's algorithms that are run on the premises of the data holder, so that by distributed training, you can train the data, you can train your algorithms in order to, with the data of the data provider. So there are technologies that are trying to make sure that the confidentiality of the data and the use of data is done for a specific purposes. And the final thing is exactly what has been mentioned before, is trust. If I know the person, and if I provide in the data to an organization, there will be also an issue of reputation if that organization will use the data not for the purpose that it has been given, on top of breaching a contract. So this is what we are trying to look and to put in place, and the data spaces should be put in place in order to create this environment of trust.
Thank you, Federico. Also, there was a question, just a follow-up question in terms of the technology. Could we really track, trace the way the data is used? And yes, in terms of technology, there are technologies. It's called data lineage, but there is the possibility to really have the full view on who has accessed which data, who has which algorithm has processed which data, and all results were obtained. So we did not focus on the technology part in our presentation, but for sure there are a lot of technologies enabling the enforcement of the different approach which we just discussed. And so thank you. I think we'll move to the next question. So there are two questions which are links, which are quite high in the voting, which are linked to what I presented relating to the air traffic control speech. So first, there is a question of understanding about the speech to text. Yes, the approach would be to provide in real time a transcript of the conversation to the pilot, so that the pilot could cross-check what has been said and could potentially copy back, also taking into the account the information of the text transcript. So this is the idea of the approach. Then there was another question regarding the data sharing. So do you intend to share these ATC speeches annotated you are going to collect? The answer is yes, but not necessarily for free. So also it's something we have not touched, but sharing does not mean necessarily that it is sharing for free. So on a lot of what we are doing, there is a cost to build the data set. There is a cost to annotate this data set. So sometimes there is also a cost for getting access to the data. And this is something which it depends on a case by case. I mean, the pricing of some of this data. So this is my answer. What we will for sure release for free is the way a standard for the annotation, so that more people could really annotate speech data, which is used for ATC, in a way that the sharing is enabled for everyone. And for that, for sure, we will release it as a public standard, so that so that the full community could really use this standard and potentially help us and the full ecosystem to move forward on this topic. So I don't know if there are, I think it was very much directed to me. I don't know if any of the other panelists has comment to make on that one. No. Okay, so then I take, there is another one for me, but I will take it later so that we just change the speaker. So there is a question regarding the presentation from IATA. So the question is IATA data exchange platform only open to airlines? Can an aviation research organization enter into collaboration with IATA in this platform?
Mm-hmm. So in general terms, data exchange programs are open to those that do the exchange, but based on the data governance, we also have access rights to other stakeholders that can benefit from it. So as long as we respect the proprietary or sensitivity of some of the data fields, we are always happy to have these discussions, especially with research organizations.
Thank you, Jean.
Mm-hmm.
Then I will take the next one. So there is a question which is, at the moment, the full aircraft data stream to Skywise, for example, goes directly to Airbus and is by default shared with the OEM. If an airline subscribes this service, okay. It is not possible for an airline not to share this data with the OEM and its partner, nor use it outside the service. Is the European strategy for data ready to create an aircraft data standards that will enable airlines to share this data with its own partner and other non-OEM service provider? So yeah, I will answer. First, I need to set the scene in terms of who owns the data, especially even if it's an Airbus aircraft, the data which it produces is not the property of Airbus. So it is the property of the airline, and the airline can decide to share this data with Airbus. After, there are some specific data which the airline has to share if some events occurs, and it is the same with IATA or with Eurocontrol. If there are some specific events, the airlines has to share the data to ensure to perform some investigation. But by default, the airline will not necessarily share the flight data with Airbus. So when it comes to Skywise, here we are providing a mean that the airline can decide to use to share the data with us, so to improve its operation. but it's not I think there are airlines that do not use Skywise for sure, and some are using it. So it's up to the airlines to really make their decision on the way they want to share or not share the data. And I think this is quite valid for a lot of the services which we have presented. It's also really an analysis which is performed by the airlines regarding a cost-benefit analysis that they do when they want to share or not their data. So this is the answer, and there is we don't prevent airlines to do to share their data with other third party than Airbus. More than that, we also, I mean, the Skywise ecosystem is an ecosystem where other partners than Airbus could develop services. So it's organized as with a store approach. So third party can develop applications for airlines, for example, based on Skywise, and this would not be done by Airbus. So this is my answer to this question. I don't know if you have comments from.
Yeah. I can briefly add, we are looking, as mentioning, we are looking at exactly this precise issues, and not on the not particularly or not specifically on the aviation sector. But let me give another example. If you buy a connected car, the manufacturer of the car will collect quite a lot of data from your car. That is private data, but also data that it's needed by the manufacturer to check on the car, to make sure that the car is working properly, to offer services. So there the issue is you as a owner, or what are the rights that you have on the data that is collected. And that one is something that we are working on it. So can you take that data, ask for that data, and provide it, for example, to another service provider that is offering you, for example, the maintenance of the car? For the moment, we are actually looking at that specific issues, and we are trying to find a solution that will open up again also the possibility of using this type of data. We've got several examples. One is in the car industries, the other one is in the agriculture, and so the machinery that farmers are using, where there is a similar issues. And we are really looking into it. So I do not have, unfortunately, here an answer. Let's hope that in a few months we will get an answer that from the Commission that will try to shed some light on this particular issue.
Thank you, Federico, for completing. So I think we will answer both myself and IATA on the next presentation, next question, which is voted. The question is, kindly explain a bit more about vision-based navigation, basically its architecture and certification procedure. So I will first start because I mentioned we demonstrated autonomous landing, vision-based landing on an A350. And the way it works is that the artificial intelligence part is used for detecting the runway. Then the control of the aircraft is not using artificial intelligence at this point in time. So it's just about automating the perception task to localize the runway. In terms of certification, this is something on which we are working together with IATA and also with the full aviation sector. There is a Eurocontrol working group 114, working on the aspect of developing new standards for the certification of data-driven AI, machine learning, because this raises new questions in terms of certification. And this is really an ongoing activity where we partner with all the whole aviation ecosystem, and especially also with IATA. And I think the previous talk, the previous Fly AI webinar, was really providing more insight into the guidance which has just been issued by IATA. So I will leave Leopold to complement on that.
Thank you very much, Romaric. And not much to add. To be honest, I was going to make reference to the guidance. I think this is the reference now to address these problematics, and I can see it has been shared in the chat at the beginning of the session. So if the author of the question would like to recover it, he has the direct link in the chat. But you very well summarized it, Romaric. Nothing too significant to add from my side.
Thank you, Leopold. Yeah, so we entice you to look to the video of the previous talk, and you will be fully up to date with the last guidance coming from IATA. And for sure, the certification aspect are key when we try to use AI on board the aircraft. And this is very much something we are working together with IATA, FAA as well. So any other comments on that from the panelists? Okay, so then, yeah, David, you were eager to say something?
No, in fact, I was going to say something on the next one. But,
okay, so then, yes, I think the next one, which is coming, is what mechanism do we use to assure trust in data transaction? You mentioned, and in data as such, okay, mainly data originality. So yeah, David, I leave you answering that one.
I don't know whether Jean wants to come in before me, but I'm sure I'm running out of time. But I just want to pick, this is a very big question. I want to pick out one very small part of it, and it comes back to, I like Jean's phrase, give to get. So it's the second time I've used it this afternoon. What we've found in terms of the AI end is to some extent sort of operations and after. So it's not really about the trust of the accuracy of the radar data or the flight plan data that's arriving with you. I think that's a different problem. But in terms of the information that you're being provided about what happened, whether it's the pricing and the seats, or whether it's the performance and the delay data, our experience is that by giving it back to people in the form of reports, which they then use, it's in their interest to provide you with accurate data, because then they're using the results and you know, they're getting accurate reports coming out of it. So as long as you get the circle established of, you give us data, we give you value-added products that you're going to use actively out of it, then the quality goes along with that, because it's then in everybody's interests to give quality, accurate data. So I don't know if that actually answers the question, but I think it's a valuable part of the trust and quality process.
Thank you, Jean. Do you want to complement?
Yes, if just to say that a big component on data quality is related to the actual group. So when we have a data exchange, the best checkers and validators are actually the participants that received information and are very, very capable of understanding discrepancies or things that don't make sense. So it's the whole dynamic, the whole ecosystem that kind of self-regulates data that would go wrong.
Thank you, Jean. And I think it's a very good also conclusion. I think we'll not take more questions. We'll just go for the wrap up, and also really inviting you for stay tuned for the next event. So Yes, I thank you all for attending really this webinar. Thank you to all the panelists. I think we managed the time properly. We were able to go through many of the questions, at least the ones that were voted aye. There are still some, so I think we will manage them offline to answer the few remaining. But this was very interesting for all of us as well to go through this interactive session. And yes, we invite you to stay tuned for our next Fly AI webinar that will be on artificial intelligence for cyber, on cyber for artificial intelligence. It will be moderated by Eurocontrol on the 15th of June. And there were already some questions today linked to this topic of how we ensure the security. So we will then really show there how we protect also against potential attacks. And this is a very complementary answer to what we shown today. So this being said, thank you all. Thank you for the organizing team. And I think we can wrap up.
Thank you very much, Romaric.
Thanks, Romaric. Very interesting.
Yeah, thank you all. Time to say goodbye.
Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you.